I'm here to talk about Season 1 of Genlock. I've only watched Season 1 of the show so far. That season originally premiered on Rooster Teeth, and then I guess it showed on Adult Swim. And then for Season 2, they released direct to HBO Max. And this show, no one recommended this show to me. I just saw it pop up. I was Googling around. I was like, what are the some contemporary animated shows that I haven't seen yet? And Genlock popped up. So I'll say a couple things about sort of the ancillary aspects of the show before I get into the review. I mean, it's more of a discussion than a review. Definitely influenced by anime. I mean, Gundam, obviously. There's some Power Rangers influence sometimes as well. The guy here in charge is Gray Haddock, and he apparently directed every episode. He apparently wrote every episode. There are some additional like staff writer kind of people who worked on the show too, but mostly this is the guy. In promoting the show, whenever I look for it, whenever I see a trailer, they really like to promote the fact that Michael B. Jordan is involved. Michael B. Jordan is here, everybody. They really want you to know that. He, in fact, has an executive producer credit on the show, which is probably means that they really wanted to incentivize him to join. So to put it another way, he is not working for scale here. They also really want you to know that this is a star-studded cast. They call it an all-star cast in different copy online and stuff that you'll see. We have Dakota Fanning. David Tennant is here. He plays like a smart doctor. He's like an engineer guy. And then we have Maisie Williams, who apparently was on Game of Thrones, and some other people who I've never heard of, but apparently they are also big stars. And also Michael B. Jordan is here, if you weren't aware of that. Apparently this follows the visual style of the other big Rooster Teeth thing, RWBY, which is the least memorable title. I have not seen it. I can't speak to that. Does RWBY feel this stiff? I think this is the stiffest looking show and sounding, but we're not there yet, that I can even really think of right now. It felt so hollow. It just felt empty the whole time. I think that's the direct result of several different aspects coming together. A few other surface level things that I should mention here. It's the aspect ratio of serious stuff. It's a letterboxed aspect ratio to tell you that this is very serious business, and this show takes itself very seriously. And I really don't have too many problems with the visuals in a more general sense, like outside of character movement and editing. The backgrounds are lovely. I think the art direction is just fine. It's very pretty, somewhat predictable, but pleasant uses of color. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this very generic version of the cyberpunk future. I think it's very bland. Feels very much like one of my least favorite depictions of the future, which is in Spielberg's adaptation of Minority Report. I hate that version of the future that we've seen in so much sci-fi stuff or future stuff, where everything is screens all the time, everything is blue and very sleek, and nothing looks lived in or real. It just struck me as very unoriginal and uninteresting. I would even say that that's starting to be a much more outdated depiction of a techno future. I'll briefly touch on music as well. The score music also feels kind of generic to me. I'm sorry, composer. I'm sure you're capable of doing some really great stuff. This just sounded like generic action music, basically, leaning towards Avengers action strings, and then the horns come in sometimes. It felt like standard Cubase score. But okay, well, apparently that's basically everything I had outside of my biggest issue with the show so far. Again, I've only watched season 1. Everything about the characters, the voice acting, and the dialogue just felt downright awful. A lot of other aspects of the show, some of which I've already touched on, are mostly just fine. They're serviceable. I can understand why people could enjoy this show. It's got the basics for a really cool like mech sci-fi show. It's there technically, and you can show that stuff in a trailer, and it seems like a pretty good pitch. But at every step of the way, the characters via the dialogue and the voice acting just drag everything down to the point where this felt amateur. And usually a benefit of something feeling amateur is that there will at least be like a lot of energy behind it, or a sort of freshness. You know, it's a raw kind of experience. It hasn't been sort of smoothed out by meeting a bunch of conventions. But here it just feels amateur. I don't know, maybe the budget wasn't there, maybe the people sort of leading the creative aspects of the show were not the right choices for those roles. I was not involved in the production of the show. I'm not going to blame specific people for the way that the show feels, but generally speaking, the showrunner, the director, the creator should be responsible for the final product. They need to steer the ship to sail in the direction they want, to arrive at the right destination, the destination that they have envisioned for the project. And of course, there are a million things that can go wrong along the way. Everything could go wrong. You're not in control of everything else. Sometimes projects it just doesn't work out. There's not good chemistry, people aren't enthusiastic about it. There could be anything, really. But clearly, something just doesn't feel right, and I think it's basically tanks the entire show for me. Because even from episode 1, within the first couple of scenes, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to try to give this dialogue a fair chance, imagining it just being read by someone else, or imagining it being read in a completely different way. Because the voice acting right out of the gate is, I'm sorry, it's noticeably flat. I'm not going to say bad, but even Michael B. Jordan here, who is our lead character, even though he doesn't really feel like it most of the time, I think that if he delivered this performance with any less energy and enthusiasm, he could probably be declared legally dead. He sounds so tired. He sounds sleepy. I don't see a reality in which that was the original vision for this character. It just sounds flat. And I would say the exact same thing about Dakota Fanning's character, even though I don't even remember her name. I'll get to Cammy. I know who Cammy is, but I thought she was, oh my goodness, I thought she was bad. And there's a potential excuse for her character in a couple of episodes where like she's going through a difficult experience and that maybe her personality has shifted in certain ways. The voice acting performance for that character as well had no life in it. And this goes right along with the character designs and how the characters are animated. I was kind of going back and forth. I was like, okay, wait, does it seem low energy and sad because of the voice acting, or is it because of how the characters are animated? Because they are very stiff. Like I said, they barely move most of the time in action sequences. Sure, they're moving around a lot, but if it's just one of the many dialogue sequences that try to set up more stakes or explain a bunch of stuff or introduce a character or something, it's almost like those Fox animation domination shows where the other characters, whether they're speaking or not, just stand there. They just kind of stand there with like a baseline facial expression that you would have as like, this is the default for the character model. It's just that. They just sit there and stare, and when it's their time to talk, maybe they'll like raise their arms a little bit and turn their head. Maybe they'll blink if you're lucky. Outside of that, it almost felt like watching action figures, or like a really rudimentary android that couldn't move too much without breaking down. It's very strange to see in action, but especially in terms of facial animations, I'm sorry, it really doesn't work when everyone just looks dead-eyed and like just deer in the headlights basically all the time. So that combined with the incredibly flat voice acting for almost every character does not make for a good combo. I will say that probably the only voice acting performance that I really enjoyed and that I thought the actor was putting some real effort into was Cammy, who's played by Maisie Williams. Like I said, I'm not familiar with Maisie Williams at all. Apparently she's a big deal, whatever. It actually sounded like she was acting for the show. Like it sounded like she had an understanding of the character. She was elevating a lot of the dialogue by just being more enthusiastic. She was doing acting, and everybody else, with maybe a couple other exceptions, weren't at all. I don't know if that's on the actors. I don't know if that's on the voice direction. Whatever the cause was, the result is no good. I'm sorry. And I really think it hurts the experience of watching the show. And so I think it's very funny, too, to then see people praising the characters and character interactions. In fact, I came across a Polygon article. I know I shouldn't have given them a click. It was like, oh, Genlock is really good when it focuses on the characters. And I was like, huh? What kind of kicks are you getting from these incredibly stiff robot-like discussions about the plot and the bad guys and where they need to go next to win the war, and then just the generic backstories for the different characters, and the negative impact of some of that generic writing and terrible dialogue could be lessened if the voice acting was great and really enthusiastic and you believed that the characters were who they said they were. It's just not there. It's just not there. There's a vacuum of personality and charisma. Maisie Williams is pretty good. The mechanic guy, I don't know who played him. He was fine. The story, I mean, I don't need to comment. It's very predictable. The only themes it seems to communicate or reinforce are just, we need to work as a team, can't dwell on the past, people change. It's like, okay, cool. All right, good. I will write that down in my journal so that I remember all these very important things. I haven't watched season 2. I am not motivated in any way to watch season 2. This just kind of feels like junk to me. That's not meant as a slight to the team behind the show. Decent animation, except for all the characters. Great visuals for the most part. But yeah, something in terms of creative direction of the show is not working. And oh yeah, my gosh, how could I forget to mention this? I hope everyone's still here in the video. When I was researching how the show was actually made and everything, there's a line in the Wikipedia. Here, I'll just read it. For the first 4 months, production of season 1 specifically, the team animated the show without the actors' voices recorded. Not common. Very typically not common in animation. You want to have the voices recorded pretty early on because you base a lot of character animation on those performances. Haddock performed every voice for the first few episodes himself, hoping his direction would match later. Do we have a culprit here? Is this perhaps an explanation for why the characters just seem completely stiff? And maybe that somehow explains how the terrible voice performances too? Like maybe they saw some of the animation and were like, oh, my character barely moves and seems to act like a robot. I guess I should deliver my lines like a robot. So that's a potential explanation for some of the stuff. I don't know. It's just not meshing for me, I'll say. Clearly some people like the show. It has not been confirmed for a 3rd season. I could see it getting a 3rd season. It doesn't seem popular enough to really go on forever, but it gets okay ratings, and I see it as a little bit worse than that. That's just because of what I happen to prefer in animation. I think the bones of the show are just fine. Some of the ideas are somewhat interesting. It's kind of just Avatar, isn't it? Like the Avatar part of Avatar specifically, like the movie Avatar where they get in an alien body, and that's basically a mech suit. It's just like a biomech suit, isn't it? I didn't enjoy season 1 of the show very much. I don't know whether I'll be watching season 2. Kind of doubt it. Man, you can feel free to share your thoughts. That's all. Thanks for stopping by.